stories about Andre's drinking are almost another level of mythology from the man himself. Andre was certainly, one of, if not the greatest drinker that ever lived.
Hollywood may glitter with champagne toasts and red carpets, but for some stars, the bottle wasn't a celebration, it was a curse. Many drank almost every day, stumbling through sets, losing everything in a haze, and some never lived long enough to recover.
Suck!
These are 19 stars who were drunk almost all the time. Number 19. Andre the Giant. Andre the Giant could drink 119 beers in 6 hours, a number so staggering that bartenders would simply stop counting after a while. The 7'4" wrestler wasn't drinking for fun or sport. Every can was medicine for a body that caused him constant agony. His massive frame, weighing over 500 pounds, put pressure on joints and bones never meant to carry such weight. Alcohol became his only reliable painkiller. The French Giant's tolerance was legendary among wrestling promoters. They'd budget an extra $1,000 per city just for his bar tabs. One night in Kansas City, Andre ran up a $40,000 tab buying rounds for an entire hotel. He'd sit at bars designed for normal humans, the furniture creaking under his weight, downing beer after beer while barely showing effects.
Ça se comprend, c'est une lavade.
Wrestlers tell stories of Andre passing out in hotel lobbies because no amount of alcohol could fully numb his pain. Security guards couldn't move him. They'd simply drape a piano cover over him and let him sleep it off. His drinking wasn't just about physical pain. Andre knew his condition, acromegaly, meant he wouldn't see old age. Doctors had told him in his 20s that his heart would give out early. Every drink was borrowed time. He died in 1993 at 46, alone in a Paris hotel room, his heart finally unable to pump blood through his enormous body. Number 18. Mickey Rourke. Mickey Rourke had the kind of face that made Hollywood executives write blank checks. Then he decided to destroy it, one drink and one punch at a time. The handsome star of 9.5 Weeks traded his movie career for a boxing ring in 1991. But the real fight was happening inside whiskey bottles. He'd show up to boxing matches already drunk, taking punches that rearranged his face into something unrecognizable. The alcohol made him impossible to work with. Directors would find him passed out in his trailer at noon, empty bottles scattered around him. He burned through relationships, money, and second chances. By the late 90s, the man who once dated supermodels was living in a $500 a month apartment, his face a roadmap of bad decisions and worse plastic surgery. He'd drink himself unconscious most nights, waking up not remembering how he got home. His comeback role in The Wrestler in 2008 wasn't just acting. The broken-down fighter trying to reclaim past glory was essentially playing himself. Rourke would cry between takes, recognizing his own story in the script. Number 17. Robert Downey Jr. Robert Downey Jr.'s father thought it would be funny to pass his 8-year-old son a joint at a party. By the time Downey was 22, he was doing cocaine in the bathroom between Saturday Night Live sketches. He famously described his addiction as having a loaded gun in my mouth, and I like the taste of metal. That gun went off repeatedly throughout the 90s. The arrests came in waves, breaking into a neighbor's house and passing out in their bed, walking barefoot through Los Angeles, hallucinating, found with cocaine, heroin, and a .357 Magnum in his car. Each mugshot showed a man disappearing piece by piece. Producers fired him from Ally McBeal after he was found wandering hotel hallways in his underwear, too high to find his room. Insurance companies refused to cover him. His own friends wouldn't let him near their children. Prison saved his life. Not the first time, or the second, but the third. Something clicked in 2003. He credits burger therapy, kung fu, and his wife, Susan, with keeping him clean. The same studios that wouldn't return his calls cast him as Iron Man in 2008, starting a comeback worth billions. He keeps his old mugshots in his office as reminders. Every mega-budget Marvel movie he makes is built on the foundation of choosing not to pick up that first drink each morning. Number 16. Richard Harris. Richard Harris decided Hawaii's traffic problem had a simple solution: him directing it with his fists. While filming Hawaii, he discovered a local cocktail made with rum, Cointreau, and grenadine that sent him into the street trying to control cars with his bare hands. Just another Tuesday for Harris in the 1970s. His daily routine: 2 bottles of vodka, then a bottle of brandy, and a bottle of port each night. Every single day. The drinking got so bad that he forgot he owned a Rolls-Royce. He'd gotten it as payment for a film role, parked it in a New York garage, and completely forgot about it. 25 years later, he found an old photo and suddenly remembered. The parking fees? Over $92,000. In 1981, doctors gave him 18 months to live. Liver failing, kidneys shot, vomiting blood most mornings. Harris threw himself a 3-day goodbye party at his favorite London pub, ordering 2 bottles of 1947 Chateau Margaux at £500 each. Then he quit cold turkey. He spent 10 years completely sober. Then, in 1991, he decided 1 pint of Guinness couldn't hurt. That pint became a nightly ritual, though he never returned to the vodka brandy port chaos. He died in 2002 from Hodgkin's disease, surprisingly not liver failure. Number 15. Peter O'Toole. Peter O'Toole was a legendary drunk, even by Hollywood standards. One night, he and actor Peter Finch tried to order drinks after a bar closed. The owner refused to serve them, so they did what any reasonable drunk millionaires would do: wrote a check to buy the entire bar on the spot. But that wasn't even his craziest drinking story. O'Toole openly admitted he couldn't remember an entire decade of his life. The 60s? Completely gone. He remembered how it started and how it ended, but everything in between was a total blackout. Oscar-nominated performances, iconic films, Shakespeare on stage, all of it happened while he was so wasted he has zero memory of doing any of it. Directors figured out fast: film his scenes before noon or don't bother. During the ruling class, the studio built him a private bar on set just to keep him contained. Then they caught him on TV at a racetrack, whiskey in hand, 5 minutes after telling them he needed to rehearse in his trailer. Reality finally hit in the mid-70s. Doctors opened him up and found his stomach dissolving. The message was brutal: 1 more drink and you're dead. O'Toole quit cold turkey that day and stayed sober for nearly 40 years. He called it the toughest role I ever played. The insane part? He made it to 81, outliving most of the doctors who'd written him off. Number 14. Anthony Hopkins. Anthony Hopkins woke up in another state with blood on his hands and no memory of the previous 2 days. It was 1975, and he'd driven from Los Angeles to Phoenix in a complete blackout. No idea what he'd done. He sat in his car for hours, waiting for police sirens that never came. That morning, he made a choice: quit drinking or end his life. There wasn't a third option. Hopkins had been drinking since he was 19, using alcohol to silence the voices telling him he wasn't good enough. By his 30s, he was downing 2 bottles of scotch a day, showing up to theater performances so wasted he'd improvise entire plays. Directors fired him repeatedly. His first wife left him. He'd wake up in places he didn't recognize, with no memory of how he got there. But that Phoenix incident? That was his breaking point. He couldn't live not knowing what he'd done during those lost 48 hours. December 29, 1975. He walked into his first Alcoholics Anonymous meeting and never touched alcohol again. Sobriety didn't just save his life, it transformed his art. 15 years later, he won an Oscar for The Silence of the Lambs, playing a character with absolute control, the opposite of who he'd been. Now in his 80s, he's been sober for 50 years and is a two-time Academy Award winner. Number 13. Marlon Brando. Marlon Brando turned the production of Mutiny on the Bounty into a $6 million disaster in 1962. What was supposed to be a 3-month shoot stretched to 8 months because Brando would disappear for days at a time. He'd show up drunk, refuse to stick to the script, and improvise whatever came to mind, forcing the crew to film his ramblings and somehow edit them into something coherent. The drinking transformed Hollywood's greatest method actor into its most unpredictable liability. By the 70s, his behavior got even wilder. During the Missouri breaks, Brando showed up wearing a dress and playing his gunslinger character however he wanted, completely ignoring the script. Directors learned quickly, if you wanted Brando, you had to accept whatever version of Brando showed up that day. His reputation became so notorious that studios factored in massive delays and cost overruns just for hiring him. Then came The Godfather. By this point, Brando needed cue cards taped everywhere, on other actors, on props, even on the scenery, just to get through basic dialogue. The man who'd revolutionized acting could barely remember his lines anymore. His weight ballooned as his career spiraled, and the roles dried up. Brando didn't just burn bright, he burned out completely. Number 12. Humphrey Bogart. Humphrey Bogart drank like it was his actual job. Whiskey for breakfast, gin at lunch, scotch until he passed out. Every single day, he'd show up to Hollywood parties nursing a scotch and soda, acting totally in control. Then by midnight, he'd be picking fights for entertainment. On set at Warner Brothers, the drinking was legendary. Late 30s, early 40s, Bogart would roll in with hangovers so brutal he looked half dead. But somehow he'd nail every take, delivering perfect performances while still drunk from the night before. Got suspended 11 times for getting into it with studio bosses, usually while holding a glass of something. During the shoot of The African Queen, things got insane. Bogart and director John Huston turned the Congo shoot into a drinking marathon. They'd pass bottles of whiskey between takes in the jungle heat, completely wasted while trying to film. By his 50s, the bill came due. Decades of constant drinking destroyed him from the inside out. Cancer took him at 57. His last words? "I should never have switched from scotch to martinis." The man was literally dying and still thinking about his next drink. Number 11. Shia LaBeouf. Shia LaBeouf's father handed him a joint at 10 years old, teaching him that reality was something to escape. By the time he was the star of Transformers, he was escaping it constantly. The arrests started piling up like empty bottles. He disrupted a Broadway performance of Cabaret in 2014, smoking cigarettes in the theater and grabbing actor Alan Cummings' backside during the show. Security dragged him out while he screamed about being in the CIA. The incidents got progressively worse. In 2017, he went on a racist rant against a black officer while being arrested for public intoxication, all caught on body cam. He told the cop he was going to hell because of his skin color. The video went viral, destroying what was left of his reputation. His ex-girlfriend, F.K.A. Twiggs, later alleged he'd shown up drunk to her hotel room and choked her, then headbutted her the next morning, still intoxicated from the night before. LaBeouf entered court-ordered rehab in 2017 and claims sobriety since. He's written a screenplay about his relationship with his father, trying to understand how that first joint led to so much destruction. Whether Hollywood will give him another chance remains uncertain. The town that loves comeback stories also has a long memory for racist rants and alleged violence. Number 10. John Barrymore. John Barrymore's friends stole his corpse from the morgue and propped it up in Errol Flynn's house as the ultimate dark prank. When Flynn came home and saw his old drinking buddy chilling in his favorite chair, he did what any good friend would do: poured them both a whiskey. It took him a minute to realize Barrymore wasn't just passed out, he was gone for real. Even from beyond the grave, Barrymore managed to crash one last party. The twisted humor of that prank? It was fitting for how Barrymore lived. This was the man once considered America's greatest Shakespearean actor. By age 50, he couldn't remember his lines. He'd stumble on stage clutching a flask, yelling, "Line!" in the middle of Hamlet's soliloquy. Those seated performances everyone thought were artistic choices? He was literally too drunk to stand. One night in 1934, he forgot he was even playing Hamlet and started reciting Macbeth instead. They dropped the curtain after 10 minutes of pure chaos. His drinking started young, stealing sips from wine glasses as a kid. By his 20s, 2 bottles of rum a day. By his 40s, he'd added whiskey and gin to the rotation. His liver got so damaged that doctors could feel it through his skin, hard as a rock. In 1942, Barrymore collapsed mid-sentence while rehearsing Romeo and Juliet on the radio. Number 9. Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage once bought a pyramid tomb in New Orleans for $61,000 because he was drunk and thought it would help him become immortal. That same year, he purchased 15 mansions, a private island, and a collection of shrunken heads, burning through $150 million while intoxicated most nights. The Oscar winner's financial advisor later testified that Cage would call at 3 a.m., slurring demands to buy castles in Europe he'd never seen. The arrests started accumulating like his debt. In 2011, New Orleans police found him screaming in the French Quarter, so drunk he couldn't remember which house was his. He'd been arguing with his wife about whether they lived there, then challenged officers to arrest him while wearing his own blood on his face from punching cars. His son Weston had to bail him out, reversing their parent-child roles. Cage would later appear at film premieres clearly intoxicated, giving rambling interviews about his pet cobras and how he believed he was a vampire. By 2009, he owed the IRS $14 million and was taking any role offered to pay his debts. 5 films a year, sometimes 6, most going straight to video. Directors reported he'd show up drunk, do one take, and leave. The man who once commanded $20 million per film was doing movies for $1 million, most of which went directly to creditors. Number 8. Oliver Reed. Oliver Reed won a drinking contest against 5 British Navy sailors, then died 2 hours later. The 61-year-old actor had consumed over 100 pints of beer at a Malta pub while filming Gladiator in 1999. After beating men 40 years younger, Reed arm-wrestled the bartender, won that too, then suddenly clutched his chest and collapsed. His final bar tab was $450, which he'd paid in advance, knowing how the night would end. Reed's entire life was preparation for that last drink. He'd turned drinking into performance art, once consuming 126 pints in a 24-hour period just to see if it was possible. His record stood until his death. Directors filmed him drunk because sober Oliver Reed was actually harder to work with. Anxiety made him violent, while alcohol made him manageable. Ridley Scott kept a bar in Reed's trailer during Gladiator, knowing it was the only way to get him on set. The production had to spend $3 million creating a digital Oliver Reed to finish his scenes. They used shadows, body doubles, and computer graphics to complete the film. Reed would have loved the irony. Even dead, he was still more profitable than most living actors. Number 7. Robin Williams. Robin Williams was doing cocaine with John Belushi the night before Belushi died. Williams left the Chateau Marmont at 3 a.m. on March 5, 1982, hours before his friend overdosed in the same bungalow. That morning changed everything. Williams quit cocaine immediately and stayed clean for 20 years, terrified he'd end up like his friend, another comedy genius destroyed by substances. The alcohol was harder to quit. Williams called it the slow knife, less dramatic than cocaine, but equally deadly. He'd drink alone after performances, trying to quiet the thousands of voices and characters in his head. His first wife said he became a different person when drunk. Mean, depressed, the opposite of the manic joy he showed the world. He'd wake up not remembering the cruel things he'd said, the furniture he'd broken. The guilt would drive him to drink again the next night. His 2003 relapse started innocently. One beer at a friend's house. Within a week, he was drinking a bottle of whiskey nightly. His family staged an intervention in 2006, and he went to rehab. But the real demon wasn't substances. It was the Lewy body dementia slowly destroying his brain. The disease caused hallucinations, paranoia, and depression that no amount of sobriety could fix. On August 11, 2014, Williams hanged himself in his California home. Number 6. Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn injected vodka into oranges with a syringe when directors banned alcohol from his sets. The swashbuckling star of Robin Hood would eat 15 of these spiked fruits before lunch, then fence with real swords while the room spun around him. His mansion on Mulholland Drive had so many wild parties that neighbors called it Cirrhosis by the Sea, and Flynn hung that name on a sign by his pool. Every morning started with champagne in bed, what he called breakfast of champions. By noon, he'd move to rum. By evening, vodka. His consumption was so legendary that Warner Brothers assigned him a full-time handler whose only job was keeping him upright during filming. During They Died with Their Boots On, Flynn fell off his horse 7 times in one day. The director finally tied him to the saddle with hidden ropes. Flynn thought this was hilarious and demanded more vodka to celebrate. Number 5. Richard Burton. Richard Burton drank 3 bottles of vodka before noon and still performed Hamlet's entire 3-hour soliloquy from memory. Directors called him the most functional alcoholic in theater history. He'd consume enough alcohol to kill most men, then deliver performances that made critics weep. The Welsh coal miner's son started drinking at 12, stealing sips from his father's flask before school. By 30, he needed a bottle just to stop his hands shaking. By 40, he was spending $1,000 a day on alcohol. He famously said, "I've been drunk for 20 years, and I'm a happy alcoholic." But the happiness was an act. Friends found him crying in his dressing room, begging the bottle to leave him alone, then pouring another drink. His body finally rebelled during the shoot of 1984. He hemorrhaged on set, blood pouring from his mouth mid-scene. Doctors found his liver had essentially melted, his kidneys were failing, and his brain showed signs of wet brain syndrome. Burton refused treatment, saying he'd rather die than live sober. He got his wish on August 5, 1984, dying from a brain hemorrhage at 58. His last words were asking for a vodka. The nurse gave him water. He knew the difference and refused to drink it. Number 4. Montgomery Clift. Montgomery Clift avoided Hollywood's party scene like it was poison. While every other star was getting wasted at premieres and after parties, Clift stayed completely sober. He saw drinking as the enemy of great acting, and for over a decade, it worked. He became one of the biggest names in Hollywood. Then, 1956 happened. His car wrapped around a telephone pole, and the crash destroyed his face. The surgeries put him back together, but the pain never stopped. For the first time in his life, Clift started drinking. Not socially, not casually, he was chasing oblivion. Alcohol became the only thing that could silence the agony the doctors couldn't fix. The collapse was fast and brutal. Within months, Hollywood's most disciplined actor turned into its biggest train wreck. He'd show up to film sets with flasks in every pocket, mixing booze and painkillers like it was nothing. Directors had to shoot his scenes before noon, because after that, he was gone. The briefcase that used to hold scripts now carried nothing but pills and bottles. On The Misfits, it got so bad that Marilyn Monroe had to literally hold him up during scenes. Two broken stars barely staying upright, pretending to be functional for the cameras. Clift died at 45 from a heart attack. But everyone knew what really killed him. 10 years of drinking that erased a lifetime of discipline. The crash took his face. The alcohol took everything else. Number 3. Ava Gardner. Ava Gardner learned to drink moonshine behind tobacco barns in North Carolina when she was 13. By the time she hit Hollywood, she could outdrink men twice her size, and did it wearing high heels and diamonds. The woman Frank Sinatra called the love of his life turned every night into a battlefield between bottles and broken hearts. Her drinking sessions were legendary demolitions. She'd start with champagne at lunch, move to martinis by 3, and finish with straight bourbon until dawn. During the filming of Night of the Iguana in 1964, she convinced director John Huston to abandon shooting for a tequila contest. They drank until both of them walked fully clothed into the Pacific Ocean, ruining thousands of dollars in costumes. The crew found them the next morning, passed out on the beach. The stories got worse as she aged. Guards at the Ritz in Madrid found her urinating in the lobby fountain at 3 in the morning. She threw a champagne bottle at a photographer, missing his head by inches. Her apartments were war zones of empty bottles and broken mirrors. She'd drink until she couldn't remember which husband she'd divorced or which lover she'd destroyed. Gardner died at 67, her once perfect face ravaged by decades of alcohol. Number 2. Michael Landon. Michael Landon played America's perfect father on Little House on the Prairie, while mixing vodka into his morning coffee at 6 a.m. The man millions trusted to teach their children values was secretly consuming 4 packs of cigarettes and a 5th of whiskey daily. His makeup artist would spray perfume on him between takes to mask the smell of alcohol seeping through his pores. The painkillers started after a horse riding accident in 1973. Landon discovered that Percodan mixed with scotch made him feel invincible. He'd direct episodes while so intoxicated that crew members would have to remind him what scene they were shooting. His wife, Lynn, found hidden bottles everywhere, behind books, in toilet tanks, buried in the yard. She'd pour them out. he'd buy more. The cycle repeated for 15 years. His body gave out at 54. The diagnosis was pancreatic cancer, but his liver was already failing. Doctors said the combination of alcohol, cigarettes, and pills had turned his organs into scar tissue. Near the end, Landon admitted to a nurse that he'd been drunk for most of his children's childhoods. They remembered a father who smelled like cologne and slurred bedtime stories. The wholesome patriarch of television died in 1991, 3 months after diagnosis. Number 1. Elizabeth Taylor. Elizabeth Taylor hurled a glass of champagne into Richard Burton's face at the Dorchester Hotel, then ordered another bottle and threw that too. Their relationship ran on alcohol the way cars run on gasoline. Remove it, and everything stopped working. They drink through breakfast, fight through lunch, make love through dinner, then start the cycle again. Burton called her Ocean because she could drink an ocean of vodka and still stand. Taylor's drinking started as medicine for back pain from a horse riding accident. 1 glass of whiskey became 2, then 10, then she stopped counting. By the time she met Burton on the Cleopatra set, she was hiding bottles in her wigs. Their first date lasted 48 hours and involved draining the bar at the Chateau de Madrid. After Burton died, Taylor finally faced her demons. She checked into Betty Ford in 1983, the first celebrity to publicly admit she needed help. She emerged 7 weeks later and became one of Hollywood's most powerful AIDS activists, using the same energy she'd put into drinking to raise millions for research. She stayed mostly sober for her last 20 years. That's all for today's Celebrity Drunk Stories. Don't miss the videos on screen now. They're just as crazy. Catch you in the next one.